Hello, I'm Nobby. Welcome to my workshop. Rather a chilly morning in the workshop. It's only just over 9 degrees here at the moment. This is a Sunday morning. A few weeks ago, my daughter-in-law offered to take myself and my wife to a car boot sale. I think in America you may call these flea markets. Generally it takes place on an open piece of land, a field, or in this case it was on in a car park, so it was on fairly hard standing, and anyone selling the goods there, like you'd have in flea markets in the USA, you drive your car into a position, they're usually rows of cars, and then by the side of the cars people lay out tables and put all sorts of things on the tables for sale. It could be anything basically, even people selling flowers, old clothing, children's toys, and the interest to me in my case was possibly tools as well. Now I haven't been to a car boot sale for over 30 years, so this is something that was, for me, quite exciting. Looking forward to possibly finding some odd tool bargains there, and I picked up one or two items there which I'm going to show you, plus a very nice bonus item which I'll leave to the end to show you. Something which was a bit of a surprise to me actually, considering where the car boot sale was and our particular location in England. So bear with me a moment. I'll bring the camera in a bit closer so I can show you the items in a little bit more detail. I'll tell you what I paid for the items in pounds sterling. You can obviously easily work this out to other currencies, euros, dollars, or whatever if you wish. So bear with me just a moment. Right, well, these are some of the items that I bought on the day. And I have to say I was rather surprised at how cheap some of these items were. When I do know the value of things, so it did surprise me. But we had a good look round. I did look at some items on one of the tables there and saw a couple of items I quite liked, but ignored it, and then we moved further on. And on one of the tables there was set up by a fairly elderly gentleman who may have been possibly clearing out the workshop or a garage or garden shed or something like that. But what caught my eye first off was this. It's like a Stanley knife, which I suppose people are familiar with everywhere, but this one it's branded Mosley Stone, and it's retractable trimming knife. And the blade in here, it's a Stanley type blade. You wind this little white plastic handle here and the blade comes out, and obviously like Stanley knives you can release this sort of screw to get inside to replace the blade. But what attracted me to it is that it's marked Sheffield, England. So it may not be incredibly old. Its styling is very similar to a lot of the Stanley knives, the very early Stanley knives, which I've got a couple of. The blades are not retractable on the very early ones. The later ones had a little lever on the top that you pressed in and pulled back to retract the blade, and pressed in and pushed forward to bring the blade out. So I thought, well, that's interesting. Let's have another look round and see what's on this table. And something which immediately caught my attention was this hacksaw blade or hacksaw frame. What attracted me is that this is obviously, from its its style very, very old, but it is made by Eclipse. It's a British tool manufacturer, and this is made in England as well. It's made here, you see, in Sheffield, England. Sheffield was, well, still is a fairly big manufacturing place in England. So well, that's definitely something I'd like. The current Eclipse frames, this part of it is made out of plastic now, and the most recent ones that are available are not made in England anymore, they're made in Italy. Just thought, well, that's something I'm interested in. I also spotted these. This is, well, termed a junior hacksaw, but the nice thing about this one is that this is also made by Eclipse in Sheffield, England. I mean, I have got a couple of these already, but I thought even if the price is right, I'll grab that as well, because it's a handy thing to have. And also spotted this one, a slightly more comfortable frame to handle than these, but this is Sandvik, a tool maker, which from memory I think is in Sweden. This is quite nice. It's got a blade tensioning device on here. It takes the same size of hacksaw blades as the junior hacksaw, but these are quite nice because the frame obviously is a lot deeper here, so you can saw further into material. So I picked this one up first and said to the chap, you know, how much do you want for this? He said, oh, £2. Well, I think in dollars, that, I don't know what it's going to be, $2.50, something like that. I thought, well, I just thought to myself, that's remarkably cheap, because the current Eclipse frames are actually quite expensive. So I said, well, yeah, I'll have that. I said, well, I said that I'd be interested in these as well, and I grabbed this. He said, well, what do you want for that? He said, oh, 50 pence. 50 pence is half of a pound. And I said, well, okay, well, I'll have all those. He said, well, look, give me £4 for the whole lot. Which, I don't know, £4, I don't know what that is in US dollars. It can't be much more than about, I don't know, $5, $5.50, something like that. So I thought, well, yeah, I couldn't turn that down, so I quite happily gave him the £4 for this lot. I was very pleased with that. Anyway, carried on moving around. There wasn't very much in sort of interesting tools for me. There were tables there that had more modern things there, which I wasn't sort of particularly interested in, but anyway, we carried on wandering around, and towards the end of the time we were there, I wandered off from my wife and my daughter-in-law. We also took my little grandson with us in his pram, just so we push him around as well. And I backtracked to one of the tables I'd looked at earlier, where I'd spotted this. This is, I'm going to put it on here and I'll tell you why in a minute. I'd spotted this. Well, we all will recognise this as being a machinist clamp or tool maker's clamp. And I picked it up and was looking at it, and this actually was absolutely covered in rust. It was filthy dirty and every part of it was rusty. I did examine it. There's no maker's name on this anywhere. It does have stamped on it numbers on both sides here. It's possible that this might have been used in a machine shop, and I've seen these markings before. It says G23. I think it's on there as well, not as clear. So that could either be a stock number from a workshop, or it may be that when these parts were made, they stamped the two parts to keep them as a pair. It's unusual from my little experience that these have machine grooves in here, which I guess act as grips. I've got a few of these anyway. I've got a couple of these that were made by a company called Moore and Wright, again a Sheffield tool maker, and I've got one about half the size of this that I made myself as a project, and a tiny little one which I made as a fun project, which I did show, I think, on my channel some time back. But these are so useful. There's so many uses for these, gripping parts together, or even holding parts in place on the top of a bench drill. So a lot of uses. And I said to the guy, well, you know, how much is that? He said, oh, a pound, £1. But well, he said, yeah, you could clean that up easy. Just soak all the parts in evapor rust. You could clean it all up and then re-blue all the parts again. So I said, well, yeah, that's, you know, a little project I could do. Anyway, I decided I would have that. I had a rummage around other bits and pieces that he also had, and there was a box with a lot of I was going to say why I've got it on here, because backtracking a bit, I have cleaned this up. I didn't use evaporust, and I've never had evaporust. It is actually fairly expensive here in England. A litre of evaporust here is about, average is about £20 for a litre. I mixed up my own rust remover from a formula that another YouTuber had put out. I mixed that up for the very first time, I took it all apart, soaked all these parts in it, and then cleaned it up started off with a toothbrush in the threads, and then I literally used one of these kitchen scouring pads to clean the rest up, and I got all the rust off. The reason I put it on this bit of cloth here is that I've liberally spread oil all over this to protect it. I mean, maybe at some point in the future, if I'm doing any cold bluing, I may re-cold blue this as well. So as I said, there's no maker's name on it, so there is a possibility that this was shop made. Could have been something used as an apprentice project, who knows. I think at some point this has been used to grip something that while it's being welded, because I notice a little nodule on here, which I think might be a splatter mark. So that's the only mark like that I can see on it, so that's going to be easy to remove later. Anyway, moving on. Looking again, as I say, on his table again in a little tray, there was a lot of tap wrenches, and I spotted these. When you see by the size of mine, they are very small ones. My attraction to these is that I do, for model making and things like that, use very small taps. So I thought these would be, you know, quite nice. I looked at this one very carefully. Obviously, professionally made. It's one that has a locking ring on here as well. So once you've locked this onto a tap, you can lock it in place. But the engraving on here again, this is one of the Eclipse ones. So well, yeah, that's there for me. Well, that's for me. And also this one, I think this is probably a commercially made one. There's no manufacturer's markings on it, but it is very, very nicely made. Even if it is shop made, it's very, very nice indeed. It's got a fixed arm here and your moving arm here. Very, very nicely made indeed. So it was those two items and this one, which he'd already quoted me £1. And I said, well, what do you want for all these together? He said, oh, £2. So that makes that £1, and these, the pair of these for £1. That's £0.5 each. So far I've not spent very much money at all, and these are really nice. There was actually 2 of these in the little container, but I thought, well, you know, as I'd already picked these out, if they were going to end up being a lot more money, I probably would have still bought them. But I suppose I could have said, well, I'll have the other one of these as well. But you know, I've got so many tap and die holders now, a huge collection of them, so I've got those. I've got another item to show you, but literally before we were about to leave, I passed. We were the car boot sales in England. They generally start very, very early in the morning, and the deal is that if you're a seller, you obviously need to get there very early so that you can drive your car in, get your table set up, get all your sale items laid out on the table. If you're a visitor, you still have to pay to go in, but if you arrive, I think it's before 8 o'clock in the morning, you pay a much higher entrance fee. I think this is because if you go very, very early, likelihood is you'll find the better pickings, if that's the right word to use. So if you arrive after 8 o'clock, you pay a nominal £1 per person to get in, which is reasonable because you've got to obviously allow some profit to the people that organise the boot sale to lay on security there as well, and people to manage the cars coming in and out of the car park for safety. But anyway, as we were sort of getting to the end of the rows of the cars and tables, I noticed there was someone packing all their products away because we were sort of nearing midday now. And I went over and looked at the table, and there was a large box with a lot of tools inside it, and a sign on the top said maximum 50 pence per item. That's again £1. And I looked in and I spotted this. Well, you can immediately see it's broken, but when I picked it up, somebody had put insulating tape all the way around here, which obviously I knew that this was broken. But what attracted me was that this is probably fairly old. It's a ball-peen hammer. They usually stamp the weight on it, but they haven't in this instance, so I'll have to wait to see what the weight of this is. But it's branded Stanley, made in England. Well, in America you're going to be very familiar with Stanley tools. They're very big, and Stanley over the years has encompassed lots of other tool manufacturers as well. So I thought, well, I said to the guy, is this the 50p or less item? He said, well, you know, it's 50 pence. So I was quite happy to hand over 50 pence basically just for the hammer head. And I thought, well, when I get home, but obviously I didn't know what was underneath here. I thought it was a possibility that this may be repairable, but if you can see, the damage to it is really bad. It's not split lengthwise, it's basically split across. So I'll just get myself a new hammer handle, and that will be a little project to fit that to the hammer head. But I like this thing. When I like anything in tools, old tools that are particularly made in England. Anyway, that was not quite my last purchase before we left. As we wandering around, all the four of us all meeting up to leave, I could see in the distance a table where the gentleman looked as though he was packing things back away in his car. But what I noticed on the table, even with my poor eyesight at a distance, he had 2 scribing blocks on the table. I mean, I guess you all know what a scribing block is. I thought that's very, very unusual to see something like that at particularly in England, at a boot sale. Possibly not in certain places in England, because obviously, I mean, not obviously, but where I live was not particularly a big industrial area, really, like the Black Country, Birmingham, Sheffield, Manchester, places like that had lots of manufacturing, particularly in the Midlands area of England, where I guess a lot of sales like this would have a lot of older, retired engineers, tool makers, and that go along to, you know, in retirement, get rid of all their old tools. But I thought it was a bit strange, so I wandered over to the table, and the guy got me in conversation straight away, and I picked up one of the scribing blocks, and he said, well, that's a Starrett scribing block. It's all complete. It has its retractable pins, all complete. I said, well, no, that really is a beautiful item. I said, when I have actually got a couple of scribing blocks already. I've got a Starrett one with a much longer column, and I also have one made by Moore and Wright. And I looked around the table, and something else I spotted on that. There was actually a V block as well, a really nice one. He said, well, I brought that along. It doesn't have the clamp. So I sort of put that to one side. But what I also spotted was this. Sorry, I was just going to lean in front of you for just a moment. Was this. They weren't wrapped up in this paper. They were wrapped up in a bit of kitchen towel. It was these 2 very, very nice parallels in really good condition. They're a 1/2 inch by 1.5 inches, and just a smidgen under 6 inches long, the 2 of them. They are a matched pair, and I said, well, they're really nice. I looked at them and put them down. But getting the chap into conversation, he was sort of quite happy to chat to me. And he said to me, I'm selling off some of my tools. They said these were mine. He said, I'm an engineer, and I work in the engineering department of a university. And it's actually a university that is not all that far away from where I live, so I'm very familiar with this particular place. Then he said, well, I'm coming up to retirement now, and I'm trying to thin out basically what I have in my these things there, they're almost ringing together. Trying to thin out all the tools I've got and get rid of it. He said, I've got a lot more, but he said, I thought I'd just come along here today. He said, often I just come as a visitor to look around, but I thought I'd come along and try and sell a few items if I could. But anyway, we chatted on a bit more, and he said, I've got, now I explained it, he asked me what I do. I said, well, I'm an amateur engineer. I had a little workshop at home, and I told him that the sort of things I make. I said, I have a love of of tools basically. And he said, well, I've got a lot more. He said, what I said, I'll give you my contact details, and if there's anything you're particularly looking for, let me know. It may be something I've got that I can help you with. And I said, well, I said, well, one thing that I mentioned, one thing that is always a problem for me is the cost of materials, how expensive buying materials are. And he said, well, I'm sure if there's anything you really need, let me know. I may be able to help you there as well. He said, I've got a huge amount of tooling and materials as well. So I thought, well, that's absolutely fantastic. What a nice offer to make. And I thought, well, I said, I'm sorry, I realised you were trying to pack up to go. He said, well, that's perfectly all right. I said, well, I better leave you to it. I said, well, but by the way, what would you be selling these for? He said, well, they are very, very nice ones. He said that, to buy these new now would be colossally expensive. He said, well, if you're interested in those, you can have them for £10. Well, to me, that sounded a really outstanding deal. So I said, well, I'll have those. So that was the most expensive purchase of the day, but I thought such a nice find, because I've looked at big parallels like this at model engineering exhibitions, and they do always seem to be very expensive. And I've got quite a lot of 1/8 inch thick parallels in sets that I use on the milling machine, but these were all obtained second hand. And some of the sets I've got, some have got missing parallels, and some of them have got damaged ones because they've all come from working workshops. The only parallels I've ever bought new are some very small ones, some 4-inch long parallels, which I often use on my mill vise with small materials, because with a small vise with big parallels and small items, sometimes these sort of overbalance a bit as well. But these, I think, are much too big to use in any of my milling machine vices, but these would be very useful for setups on the bed of the mill itself. And I have got actually a use for these in the future. So I don't know what you think. They do look very nice. They're obviously all hardened and ground. I've only sort of checked them by putting them together and sort of rubbing my fingers across the top, so that I know they are a match pair. What I will do at some point is check these out on my surface plate. Then I've no doubt that they are going to be perfect, sort of to check that they are nice and parallel as well. So I'm sure these are, well, I'm guessing these are industrially made rather than being workshop made, although no reason why they couldn't be actually, because if these were made in the university engineering shop, I'm sure they've got, well, I know they have all the tooling even to grind all of these. So a nice find. When I got home, I found a piece of this sort of like an oil protective paper to wrap them in, and I had a hunt around at home. If ever I see nice wooden boxes, I try to grab them to keep things in my workshop, and I had this. I don't know what on earth this was made for. I picked this up somewhere years ago, but as luck would have it, these will fit nicely inside this box. Could have almost been made for them. So I've got a nice box to keep these in now, and also keep them wrapped up in this special paper. So there we are. Let me know what you think of this. This may not be of interest to all of you, really. I just thought it was an interesting little haul. So I mean, this whole lot, what did it work out to? I don't know, £16 for the whole lot, which I thought was really good. I think also the trick possibly of going, when you go to anywhere that's like this sell tools, is not to take too much money with you. And in fact, I mean, all with exception of these, all these items that I could pay for with some odd coins that I had in my pocket. So, I mean, I'm quite pleased with this. This has given me a little workshop project to do, get myself a nice handle for it. You know, I've got a lot of hammers. When I started the workshop out, I bought a set of 3 second-hand hammers, ball peen hammers, all in different weight sizes. To give me sort of a nice range as well. So there we are, another project. That was already a little project to do. Didn't bother to show doing that because watching the rust come off that is like watching paint dry. Anyway, thanks for joining me in a rather chilly workshop this morning. I hope that may have been interest to someone. I know if you're not, just skim through or switch off. So thanks again for joining me, and thanks to all the subscribers to the channel, and hope to see you again with another video very soon. Bye bye for now.